What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. While the larger moves still hang in the balance, considering what is going on with James Harden, what is going on with the future of the Sixers, the franchise is still moving forward, making some important moves along the edges. Today, I'm here to break down the Sixers signing of Marcus Bagley, what that means for the Sixers overall, and why I'm still optimistic over this kind of new page in the Sixers organization as far as how they're structuring rosters and building from the bottom up. Now, before I dive fully into it, I would like to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. As of now, 91.4% of you guys watching this video have not subscribed yet. That is too high for my liking. Then we have some big plans coming up for these Sixers season. I want to get everyone as involved as possible, keep this thing growing, and keep churning out some content. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and let's get fully into it. So the latest news is that the Sixers did reach an agreement with Marcus Bagley. It is an Exhibit 10 deal, and per the Sixers press release, it says, Philadelphia 76ers President of Basketball Operations Daryl Morey announced today that the team has signed Marcus Bagley. Per team policy, the terms of the deal were not disclosed. Bagley spent parts of 3 seasons at Arizona State, where he posted career averages of 10.9 points and 5.5 rebounds in 17 total appearances. During his time as the Sun Devil, he also shot 35.1% from beyond the arc on 5.5 attempts per game over 3 years. He also is the younger brother of Marvin Bagley III, who has played 5 NBA seasons after being selected with the number 2 pick by the Sacramento Kings in the 2018 draft. So for starters, it's very clear that Marvin Bagley is the more superior of the two brothers. And to get into Marcus specifically, when you ask what do we know about Marcus Bagley as a basketball player, the answer is really not a lot. That the biggest point of confusion for me is him playing 17 games across 3 seasons of basketball at Arizona State. And I'll pull up his stats here. I don't believe you can read into this very heavily because, as you can see, he played 12 games as a freshman, then just 3 as a sophomore, and then 2 as another season as a sophomore. There were a number of injuries involved here. There were a number of points of whether it's suspension or being kicked off the team, stuff with him not quite getting along with his coach. I don't want to read too much into that. Obviously, there's a ton of we won't know as far as the behind-the-scenes stuff of the situation. It's not a great look that he only played 17 games across 3 seasons. The raw numbers look solid. I mean, when you talk about 10.8 points per game as a freshman, 12.5 points per game in his 3rd season as a sophomore, the minutes are pretty solid. When you kind of dig through the box scores on the game-by-game basis, it's very up in the air. That there's games where he plays 30 minutes, games where he played 5 minutes. I'm honestly going to scrap it and blank slate it as far as what this guy is. I can tell you by the limited film that I was able to find, he's much more of a traditional wing style player than his brother Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley more of a pure post up, a guy who kind of operates as a power forward center type player who plays out of the post, has a nice little mid-range shot, is shown some signs of progress. Originally was labeled a pure bust after being the number 2 pick by the Kings. Struggled after coming into the NBA after he spent 1 season at Duke. He's starting to find his footing as an NBA player. He's not a guy that I'll still continue to speak super highly of or believe in as from a major extent as a basketball player, but I do think he's beginning to turn his career around a little bit. Marcus is much more of a true wing in the way that he plays. That he does strike me as a 3-and-D type of player. He's 6'8", so a little bit smaller than his brother, but that's still good NBA size. And as far as to pull up his college recruiting, this is really the point of motivation in this deal, or what gives these Sixers the desire to take a chance on him. Listed at 6'7" at this point, it does look like he grew a little bit from Phoenix, Arizona. He was a 5-star according to Rivals, a 4-star according to 247 Sports, and the overall recruiting rankings in this class, he was ranked 30th on Rivals, 31st on 247 Sports, and 33 on ESPN. So while we don't know how much of how he turned out, the talent was still there to an extent. The biggest point that I want to harp on with all of this is I am very excited to see the Sixers continuing to build from the bottom up, continuing to put a focus on rounding out the bottom of the Sixers roster. And I do think that in this area is an area that was overlooked for several years with this front office. And to pull up just the bottom of the roster here, here's a couple guys who they've handed out these Exhibit 10 deals and 2-way deals to. So obviously there's Filip Petrusev, who has a complete roster deal. He will be a part of the 15-man Sixers roster. That is the one guy with the additional year when I look at these. And then David Duke Jr., I dropped a video on as well. I'm very impressed that he was able to be had for an Exhibit 10 deal, a guy who has shown some flashes in the NBA. Javonte Smart, an LSU product, another Exhibit 10 guy who's an intriguing prospect to have around the organization, a guy who showed some real stuff in Summer League, and I'm happy they rewarded it. Marcus Bagley, who I'm recently speaking about in this video. And then the 2-way contracts with Ricky Council the fourth, obviously showing his signs of progress and progression and just intrigue in his overall ability there. Nice athletic piece, the type of guys that you want to take a chance on. Terquavion Smith, who I cannot talk enough about and who I really believe is going to be a fan favorite sooner than later within the Sixers organization. And then Azuolas Tubelis, who's the Arizona product, who has made an impact there and is more of a stretch 4 or stretch 5 type of player, a little smaller than I would like him. He measured in at 6'8", so that's kind of my biggest, I guess, negative toward him is you just can't truly be a stretch big man if you're only measuring at 6'8", and I don't think he's that high quality of a rebounder or decision maker with the basketball. Tubelis is probably the guy on this list that I am lowest on as a whole, but the point still remains of that they are doing this job to coat the bottom of the roster. And just to remind you guys as far as what an Exhibit 10 contract is, because I know it gets thrown around a lot, essentially this is more or less a high-paying G League contract. That the purpose is to allow teams to bring in a few players to compete in training camp for a final roster spot or on the team's G League affiliate. So the difference between an Exhibit 10 and a normal non-guaranteed deal is that teams can include an optional bonus in the contract worth up to $75,000, and that bonus will be awarded if he spends at least 60 days with the team's G League affiliate. So essentially it's a way to get a little bit more of a high-paying opportunity to a lot of these guys. It's a way to motivate more talented players to take a chance and join your organization and really stack the deck as far as prospect goes. That you are able to turn the franchise into a nice kind of step-by-step process from you become an Exhibit 10 guy, then become a two-way guy, and then you become a fully rostered guy. That is a process that the Sixers have struggled to iron out for years, that we see teams around the NBA who either have it or they don't when they come to that. When you think about teams like the San Antonio Spurs, the Miami Heat, teams like that who have a nice developmental trajectory, this is oftentimes used as a pathway. The Sixers, on the other hand, have not done a good job of that we've seen them struggle to keep talent, and there are some success stories. Shake Milton was a guy who was on a two-way contract at one point. There are players who have risen out of it, Isaiah Joe, guys like that, but for the most part, these Sixers have not developed on these types of players. And these end of the roster positions like this, I kind of view as like lottery tickets in a way. It's that you're taking a chance on these young guys. A guy like Terquavion Smith, who I still cannot believe went undrafted, that the more I watch him and I continue to get hyped up over the clips coming out of the Rico Hines runs, I might have to drop another video on some of the more clips that are coming out of there because it does fire me up. But you can follow me on Twitter to see some of those clips that I'm tweeting out from there. But I still can't believe Terquavion Smith went undrafted. That's the exact type of talent that you take a chance on with these types of slots. That there's a really high chance that he outperforms that. If he finds a way, it's essentially a no-risk, high-reward opportunity. But if these guys don't have it, if they're not cut for the NBA, you lose a little bit of money. That you lose a roster spot, lose a little money, it's no big deal, and the focus is on the main roster anyway. But if one of these guys turns into a player, if you catch lightning in a bottle and have a guy that can grow into a contributor, that's a big deal when you talk about the financial aspects of it. To bring up Shake Milton again, one of the reasons that he was such a success story, and he's obviously going to be on the Minnesota Timberwolves this year, so shout out to Shake Milton. He really did his thing. I'm happy he's getting a new opportunity somewhere else. But why that was such a success story is that was a guy that was a second-round pick out of SMU. Sixers handed him a two-way contract, and when he showed that he had a little something, they signed him to a long-term deal for much cheaper value than would be the case. He was making just over $2 million for, I believe it was 3 seasons that he was on that deal. That's phenomenal value for a guy who's a legitimate rotational piece and a guy who was at points the sixth man on this roster, at points a high-level bench player, and of course points where he was buried in the rotation. But nonetheless, that is kind of the strategy behind it. That was a Sam Hinkie special of capitalizing on these guys for long-term value before they're really due to get paid. So it's a little more assurance for them that they get a guaranteed contract, and you can kind of get them at a cheaper value before it's truly found out what they can do. So that is overall the process that I'm happy about these Sixers ironing out here. I don't know how big of a process Marcus Bagley will be in all this. I would not say he's a guy that I'm incredibly optimistic on his future outlook, but this is still the point of taking these lottery tickets, taking these guys who have the upside, have this pedigree that they've shown in the past, and see what happens when they are thrown into the Sixers organization. On the best case scenario, maybe Bagley just needed a fresh start. He needs a new location. He needs to get out of Arizona State, and maybe he sees more eye to eye with the coaching staff here. He stays healthy, and he can put the pieces together. I do believe he is that quality of talent that it's worth taking a chance on. We will see how things shake out from here. But nonetheless, this is great news that the Sixers continue to add good talent to the organization. Thank you guys for tuning in this video. Once again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you're not missing out on any of the content here on Sixers Digest. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on some of the bottom of the roster guys. If there's anybody that's jumping out to you or you want to hear a little more about, and I would love to get into it. So once again, thanks for watching, and I want to talk to you next time. Peace.